The waves crashed violently against the steel sides of the landing craft. Private James Jimmy Halpern clutched his rifle, his knuckles white and his breath short. The date was June 6, 1944, D-Day, and Operation Overlord was underway. The sky above was choked with smoke and fighter planes. The beach ahead, code-named Omaha, looked like hell on earth. At just 20 years old, Jimmy had never even left his small town in Ohio before the war. Now he was halfway across the world, about to storm a beach littered with mines, barbed wire, and German machine guns. Around him, his brothers-in-arms muttered prayers, kissed lockets, and checked their gear. The metal ramp of the landing craft dropped with a splash. Gunfire erupted instantly. The first man out was cut down before he hit the water. Jimmy dove into the freezing sea, bullets zipping past. His gear dragged him down, but he kicked hard, crawling through the waves toward the shore. Sand stuck to his face as he collapsed behind a metal tank trap. All around him was chaos. Men screaming, blood staining the surf, and explosions shaking the earth. But they pressed forward inch by inch. Jimmy saw his friend, Corporal Frank Martinez, waving him on. Together, they ran toward a gap in the barbed wire, dodging enemy fire. A mortar shell landed nearby, throwing Jimmy into the air. His ears rang. Dirt filled his mouth. But he lived. Frank didn't. Grief had no place in the battlefield. He had to keep moving. By nightfall, the Americans had secured a section of the beach. The cost was heavy, thousands of lives. Jimmy sat behind a broken wall, staring at the stars above Normandy, unable to sleep. The boy who left Ohio was gone. In his place was a soldier. The next weeks were a blur of mud, rain, and gunfire. Jimmy's unit pushed inland, clearing villages, forests, and fields. He saw the kindness of French villagers offering bread, and the cruelty of war. A family huddled in a bombed-out house, a child clutching a doll. But it wasn't all loss. In the town of St. Lo, Jimmy's platoon liberated a makeshift prison camp. Inside were American paratroopers who'd been captured on D-Day. Among them was Lieutenant Daniel Reese. Bloodied but alive. Jimmy helped carry him to safety. "We thought we were forgotten," Reese said hoarsely. "Not a chance," Jimmy replied. The war changed Jimmy. He wasn't just fighting for orders now, he was fighting for the people around him, for the freedom of strangers, and for the memory of those lost. In December 1944, Jimmy's unit was sent to Belgium, just before the Battle of the Bulge. Snow blanketed the forest, and the cold was unbearable. The German counteroffensive came like a tidal wave. Jimmy and a small squad were cut off, holding a farmhouse against tanks and infantry. They had little ammo, no radio contact, and no backup. Days passed. Jimmy kept morale up with jokes and stories about home, about baseball, mom's apple pie, and fishing with his brother. Deep down, he didn't know if they'd survive. On the fifth night, with frostbitten fingers and empty bellies, they heard the rumble of engines. But instead of German tanks, it was American Shermans. Reinforcements had come. Jimmy wept for the first time in months. In May 1945, the war in Europe ended. Jimmy was alive. Scarred, thinner, and with a 1,000-yard stare, but alive. He had marched through France, fought in Belgium, and crossed into Germany. He had seen the worst of humanity, and the best. When he finally stepped off the ship in New York Harbor, the Statue of Liberty stood tall in the morning fog. He looked up at it with new eyes. Freedom wasn't just an idea now. It was something he'd fought for, something he'd bled for. Back in Ohio, the town gave him a hero's welcome. But Jimmy didn't feel like a hero. He was just a man who had done his duty. He kept a photo of Frank Martinez in his wallet, and a small piece of shrapnel from Omaha Beach in his drawer. He became a teacher, married his childhood sweetheart, and had 3 children. But he never forgot. Every year on June 6th, he would sit on the porch, close his eyes, and remember the roar of the waves, the crack of gunfire, and the faces of the fallen.